Portland Prison. I hated everything about the place. I hated where it was. I hated the people that were there. I hated the staff that were there. I hated every minute of the time I spent there. When I did my interview with the comedian, I kind of glossed over in my mind about how much I hated it there. And, when I spoke to him, I thought that after the first few months there, I kind of got used to it. But when I went to kind of do my own diary podcast, I realised a lot of the time I spent there was actually fucking miserable. And it probably wasn't only until, the last, maybe 4 to 6 months that I was there, that I actually found the place quite reasonable. But on the whole, the place was a fucking nightmare. So it's when you're in Exeter, you get a couple of choices. It's probably the second choice of prison that you really want to go to. As a young prisoner, you got the choice between Portland and Guy's Marsh. And when I say the choice, that's because the staff pick it, and you don't really get too much influence on where you go. But it's So one day the slip came under the door, and I found out I was going to Portland. It's about a 2 to 3 hour drive in the sweatbox, back in that little Securico van. You want to hope that you're going straight to Portland and they're not stopping off anywhere else. There were 3 prisons on the island at the time. There was Portland, there was the Verne, which is a foreign national prison now, and at the time there was a prison ship there as well, which used to be, I think, an ex-army, sort of American army hospital ship that had been converted into a prison ship to help alleviate some of the overcrowding crisis. It's not there anymore, but it was there for a time. Once you get into Portland, it's all the wings named after different sort of Navy captains. So you got Hardy, Rodney, Nelson, Grenville, Benbow, Raleigh, and Drake. Rodney was the sort of rehabilitation and therapeutic community wing. They had TVs down there, along with Grenville and Nelson, the under-18s wings. But the therapeutic community was quite a weird little place. I'll do another little video maybe one day about those. But they didn't have tellies on all the time. The staff used to switch them off during the day, and obviously you have to look busy and shit. And Grenville and Nelson was quite a wild place to be. A lot of the under-18s, I don't think they could get extra days. So it's quite fucking wild on those wings. And in one of the comments, I've seen one of the boys saying that he got his jaw broke over a fucking TV aerial cable. That sounds pretty standard for Portland at the time. You'd see all sorts of fucking things kicking off. Portland, like I said, I hated it because it was quite a violent place all the time, and you'd have to fucking watch yourself, and you have to learn how to fight basically, or at least learn how to keep yourself out of fucking trouble, because otherwise you'd quickly find yourself on the wrong end of fucking someone's bad temper. So going into Portland, you go onto Hardy Wing to start with. It's a weird little induction wing. They kind of throw everyone in together. Portland Prison services prisons from all over the south of England. So, I'm down from the southwest, down from the tip of Cornwall. So there was people there from Plymouth. You got Exeter, South Wales, Bristol, across then to like Southampton, Bournemouth, and even quite a lot of people there from London as well. Now, obviously, the people from London would come through Feltham and sometimes Aylesbury. There'd be a real mixed bag of people coming down. So it wouldn't just be British prisoners. You get a lot of foreign nationals as well. So all sorts of people from Europe and Eastern Europe. There'd be people from Yardie, and Jamaican gangs in coming over from Jamaica. There was even a lad from Trinidad. He was there as well. So like I say, there was a real mixed bag of people in Portland, and you're all kind of thrown together on this wing. And it was the first time I'd ever experienced anything like that. It was the first time I'd ever experienced racism against white people as well, because the prison's pretty much 50-50 between kind of whites and blacks. So yeah, it's a real different experience. It's something I'd never experienced before. And you get sort of thrown in with all these people who are in gangs in London and stuff, and they've it's a whole different way of life to what I was used to growing up in, like I say, down in the southwest, down in Cornwall. So it was a real culture shock, and I couldn't quite keep up to start with. I was only 18. I was in Portland between the age of 18 and 21. Back in 2001, sort of to 2003. And honestly, it was the worst time I spent in prison. I did get bullied quite a lot there to start with. I've done other videos on that, so I won't bore you with that again. But I did toughen up quite quickly. You learn to fight, you learn to stand up for yourself, you learn to be quite explosive, and if you don't fucking swim, then you sink quite quickly. So Hardy, like I say, was a weird little wing. It's got a weird toilet system because you don't have toilets in your cells. You don't even have a sink in your cell. So if you want to shave or anything like that, you've got to go out in the morning and go and shave with all the other lads, kind of, fucking doing their shit. Go and brush your teeth as well. First thing in the morning, out, with all the other lads. A communal sinks. At the end of your landing. But if you wanted to go to the toilet, so after, I think was it after 8 o'clock, something like this, you'd have a queuing system. So you'd press a button in your cell next to the door, and you would be thrown into this queuing system where you would have 6 minutes out of your cell. So that the door would be popped open, you'd go out the cell. The end of the spur was kind of locked off. So you could go to the end of the landing and then into the little toilet bit, but that was it. You couldn't get anywhere else. And you'd have 6 minutes to either go for a shit or, do whatever you needed to do. And then most people would be running around, passing sort of Rizzlers under the door or having a chat with their mate, something like that. You'd occasionally get the night staff sort of coming over the radio or the intercom, kind of telling you to come back to your cell, but, nobody really listened to them. And then you go back into your cell and you'd shut the door, and a bit later again you could press the button and go back into the queue again to get another 6 minutes out your cell. And it's the only prison I've ever known to do that. But then again, they needed some sort of solution to not having toilets in the cell. It's better than fucking having to shit in a bucket. That's something I've only ever had to do a couple of times, and it's not something you want to do often. Once you come off Hardy, quite quickly, within the first couple of weeks. I went from there over to Bembo. Bembo, one of the old kind of Victorian style wings, kind of 5 or 6 stories high. It's classic kind of prison association area downstairs. On the ones landing, a lot of the one cells are all twos. So that means there's 2 people in each cell. You stay down there for a couple of weeks while you get inducted onto the wing, and then you go up onto the sort of the 2s or the 3s, and then you kind of work your way up to the 4s landing, which was the enhanced landing, which meant you got a lot more time out your cell. Now, I didn't really ask much from the prison, so I was never one of these people that was always in the office or trying to fucking get too much from the prison service. My kind of standing was that these people are keeping me against my will. So, the less I have to do with them, the better. But I'd always try and work my way towards enhanced, because it just made sense to me that, if I'm going to be in prison, I want the most amount of money to spend. I want the most visits. I want, the most fucking time out of my cell, that sort of shit. So, and some prisons have an enhanced TV room as well, where it's a lot less hectic, and a lot fucking... a lot less of a zoo than the rest of the prison on association sometimes. So, yeah, I'd always worked my way to enhanced and, eventually up onto the 4s landing, up on Bembo. It's a pretty normal routine. There's no TVs in the cell, like I said. So you're listening to the radio or you're just reading books. For the 18 months or so that I didn't have a TV in Portland, I was reading 3 books a week. I go to the prison library and I'd just pick books at random, and once you find an author that you like, I would just get everything they'd ever written and just keep keep going and getting more and more and more. I'd read autobiographies, I'd read fiction, I'd read fantasy, anything to pass the time and kind of get your head out of the cell, really. It's very similar to other prisons. You've got education, or you've got workshops, that sort of thing. The workshops are pretty good. It's it's kind of fucking mechanics, carpentry, bricklaying. There's a little recycling workshop up there. There was also a little carpentry where they do projects as well, not projects, but contracts. So they're making and when I say contracts, they're making pallets and shit like that. But it's still, you get a bit more money than you did for the MVQ. The gym was pretty good there. You had a good weights room. You had a good sports hall, and then a couple of outside football pitches that you used to play cricket on, or football, that sort of shit. They take you out there to do circuits. The circuit club was a fucking was a fucking beast. The guy was a fucking animal. He was about 60 when I was there, 50 or 60, but he'd fucking just plod along and keep doing these fucking circuits. He was great. But they used to do it was called a dirty dozen, and they do it all the fucking time. For extra gym and stuff in the evenings, and because when you're there, you want to get as many gym sessions as possible. They used to have this queuing system where you put your names in the little slot on the gym wall, and when I was gym orderly there, if people were pissing us off or they were dickheads, we used to move their fucking name down the board. So I apologise to anyone listening to this who found their name constantly being moved down the board. But if you annoyed us in any way, you found out quickly that you very rarely got the extra gym. So I didn't like the place. Like I say, I got bullied. A lot of people do. It's a place where you've got to fight to survive, or hold your head above the water. Be confident. And once I started getting muscular, once I started getting kind of fit, I was able to hold my head above water quite well, and I got by quite easily. But yeah, it was a difficult place to be when I first started there. The uniforms fucking rank, as prison stuff goes. You get these obviously prison jeans, you get prison tracksuits when you're on the wing. But when you go outside, bearing in mind it's fucking freezing, it's stuck out in the channel. On the island of Portland, and it's just off the coast from Weymouth, and it's another one where it's cold a lot of the time, and seagulls everywhere. That's one thing that anyone who always remembers from Portland is the amount of seagulls you've got there, and bearing in mind the floodlights are on, so it's always daytime around the yards and outside the wings. So these fucking seagulls are constantly going and fighting and scrapping, because there's always food being thrown out the wings. So it's the prisoner's own fault. If there was no food around the wings, there'd be no fucking seagulls. But these cunts fucking sit everywhere, all on the flat roofs and things, and they're vicious little bastards. I've been shat on before walking around. The trolley boys, because the flat roof of the kitchen is where a lot of the seagulls used to live. So the kitchen boys used to get fucking attacked by the fucking trolleys, by the seagulls, sorry, as they were bringing the trolleys back. It was fucking hilarious watching it. So, the kit, you'd be coming out and you've got your jeans on and your black shoes, black prison fucking shoes. And then you'd have these donkey jackets as well, which make you look like fucking road workers. And then these black mittens, so you got, your thumb stuck in it, look like oven gloves, basically. And you'd be marching around with your fucking, your donkey jackets and shit, looking like you're from the 70s, about to go on a miners' strike, I didn't like the place. I wouldn't go back there if you paid me now. It was quite difficult. I might do another video one day where I go back to all these prisons and kind of, have a look around from the outside of the wall. I did get outside of the wall one time at Portland because of, not one time, quite a lot of times, because I worked my way through towards, just before I got my parole, I got a job on the outside gardens, so I was able to get basically licensed to go outside every day. We were still escorted, we still had to go back at lunchtime and shit, but we'd be cutting grass just outside the prison and tending the flower beds just outside the prison gates and all that kind of shit. It was a nice taste of freedom. It was just towards the end of the summer, just coming into winter, so it was pretty good. When it got a bit cold, it was fucking horrible, and we'd be in the greenhouses, fucking doing bulbs or some shit like that, and we'd sit there and we'd try and pass the time, basically because we was football fans. Again, it was such a little mixed bunch. One of the guys I was there, he's the only other person I've met from Eritrea, the little country I think it's just north of Somalia. So he was, a young lad from there who had escaped the country. And just next to him stood a Millwall football hooligan, who was, South London, through and through. Got caught for, his face was in the Sun newspaper for being a football hooligan, and he'd been pictured and caught as part of a fucking national campaign to clean up the game. And then there was me in there, arm robber from the southwest, all in there, fucking planting daffodils and shit. It was when I'm saying that it's a mixed bag, this is what I'm talking about. My best mate, who lived in the cell next door, was a drug dealer from Jamaica. He used to fill his stomach full of bags of cocaine, and fly over, drop him off in London, pick up his cash, and then fly back. He came from a poor area in Jamaica. It's a place called Half Moon Bay, and he used to look after the little kids in his area before they go to school. He'd go off to the market and buy them like 15 school bags, to make sure all the little kids in his area had a bag, at least to take their books to school and things like that. He was a really good guy. I really like hip-hop music and rap and things like that, and I used to listen to it for years and years and years on the radio at night. So I've got quite a long-lasting knowledge of hip-hop and rap music and things like that. So, and me and him would just sit there chatting for hours about our own love of the music. And we really got on well, despite coming from two completely different corners of the world. He would tell me stories of him growing up in Jamaica. He'd tell me stories about the caves. He'd ask me if we have caves here, and I'd be like, yeah, we've got caves. And caves in Cornwall go back for a few meters. But he'd be telling me about these caves in Jamaica where they'd go on for miles, and you'd have to take almost like a Molotov cocktail down there with you. And you'd be walking through, and there'd be bats coming through and flying out, giant bats. And then suddenly your cocktail lantern would go out, and you'd have to try and find your way back out in the pitch dark, in these caves. Obviously, life in Jamaica is crazy tough. He spent his time between there and New York, and then obviously flying to the UK. He managed to get caught and got something like 6 years for doing that. He did give me his address, but I managed to lose it, and I've never been in contact with him again. There's a few people from prison I am in contact with, and I know a couple of them are listening to the podcast now. But other than that, I don't really have much to do with the people I came out of prison with. But he was one of the guys that I really do regret not staying in contact with. As now, I'd love to know how he's getting on, and where life has taken him. There was a guy who was in the cell opposite me, who I'm fairly sure was a Kosovan war criminal. He had a big eagle tattooed on his chest, and I'm fairly sure he was one of Slobodan Milosevic's soldiers. He was a crazy little guy. He used to tell me stories about his exploits. He used to live in a house full of prostitutes in Italy. Just fucking stuff that I'd never encountered again. Growing up in a small ex-miners town in Cornwall, hearing stories about how he got kicked out of school when he was a kid because he took a hand grenade to school one day. And I remember saying to him, how did you get hold of a hand grenade? And he just kind of shrugged his shoulders and kind of said, well, how else? I never really understood what he meant, but I didn't want to let on that I didn't have a clue what he was talking about. He was quite a devout Christian, and he would try to push these books on me all the time. It would always have some sort of Christian, backing or some sort of Christian morality behind it. And one day I remember playing chess with him, and he kind of trapped me and took my king and things. And I remember kind of jokingly saying, "Oh, you're not as stupid as you look," and this really tickled him because he'd never heard the phrase before. Bearing in mind, he's quite a tough guy. He was in there for stabbing and some Iraqi guy on the streets of whatever town he'd got onto. And I remember he was just like sort of walking around chuckling for a little while about that. You're not as stupid as you look. He was quite a serious dude. I remember one time pissing him off to the point where we were playing pool, and I can't remember exactly what it was we did or what I did. But yeah, we ended up having an argument. And he pinned me up against the wall with the pool cue to my neck, and I managed to calm him down, and we sorted it out later on. But yeah, it was a crazy little fucking guy. His name was Fred, and again, I doubt you'll ever fucking listen to this, but the wonders of the internet. I wonder if you'll ever get back in touch again. So I spent a lot of time in Portland. Eventually, we managed to get tellies, and the regime softened up a little bit. But it was a violent place. Fights were happening all the time. In Feltham, just the prison just outside London, the different prison gangs were put on. The different street gangs ended up on different wings in Feltham. But when they got sent down to Portland, they'd just be all thrown in together. So violence would always be erupting between the different lads from London. Things would be kicking off. Old scores kept getting settled. In my first couple of weeks there on Hardy, someone got hot watered. They put boiling hot water in a flask, and some sugar as well, and they threw that over his face. And the reason they put the hot water in there, the sugar into the hot water, is because it makes it more of a treacly kind of tar. The sugar sticks to the skin, and it's obviously boiling hot as well, which prolongs the agony. And you end up seeing the skin just peel off people's faces sometimes. It's really horrific. It's one of the old school, but not a great deal that the prison can do about it. But it's one of the old school methods of settling a score. And like I say, I was only there a couple of weeks before it saw it happen, and I've seen it happen over and over again. I've seen whole buckets of hot water being thrown over people before. It's quite medieval sometimes. One of my lasting memories, and I've had to get counselling over some of the shit that happened at Portland. One of my lasting memories was this lad. I was on the Threes landing, and I was just being let out for PE, not PE, just being let out for gym, and the member of staff opened my door. It swung open a little bit. I kind of got my bag together. It was about 1:30, something like that, 2:00, and just after they opened the door, maybe 5-6 seconds afterwards, there just seemed to be a bit of commotion and banging, scuffling, that sort of thing. So I quickly looked towards my doorway, and someone was backing off, and this other lad was slashing him with this blade, or a couple of blades, that was stuck in a toothbrush. And this guy was just opening up where he was getting slashed across his face and chest, and obviously blood was gushing everywhere, and this guy was just fucking hacking at him. And then the member of staff that would open my door, she was this little Irish woman, and she was screaming at them to fucking stop, but he was just fucking hacking at this guy, and it all happened sort of right in front of me. In the seconds, I went from being shit, yeah, I'm fucking getting to the gym, getting down to PE, to then suddenly being, seeing this fucking slasher movie scene, within feet of me, and then my door being closed, and obviously the prison going into some sort of relative lockdown while they sort it all out. Those kind of things were the memories that I really repressed, and I put in a box and stored it way back in my memory, and it didn't do me any good. Years later I suffer with anxiety and depression from what happened at Portland, and my coping mechanisms are all fucked up, my reward system's all fucked up. Portland kind of rewards you for being loud, violent, and extreme, when you try and put that in place in the real life, in the real world, and you quickly end up fucking either back in prison, or fucking you can't hold down any kind of job or relationship when you act like that. So Portland, it made me feel like Bane coming out there. Nothing could really hurt me, nothing could really touch me because I'd just come out of fucking hell. But it was a tough old little place, but one that I thrived in the end. But it took me right until the fucking end, the end of the 2 years, best part of 2 years that I was there, before I actually started thriving. Some would say I needed it. I didn't manage to survive the rest of the fucking 10 years that I was in prison without being in Portland. But if you'd thrown me a lifeline in the first couple of months there and said, look, if you get out and never commit crime again, we'll let you out now, I would have bitten their hand off, and I would have quite possibly never committed another crime again. But that's not the way, that's not the way things work. Who knows now? Like I say, I might do a video one day where I go up to prisons that I've been to and do a little walk around on the outside. That would be quite a good idea. Portland, like I say, it's a place where I've had a lot of repressed, pretty dark memories of. So I've done other videos in my diary and in the prison bullies video. So if you want to listen to those, then by all means go and find those. But again, the rest of the time wasn't too bad. Ended up being a bit of a proving ground. I toughened the fuck up. It made me the man I am now, good or bad. I'm going to keep making these videos as long as people want them. I've got a little list of ones I'm going to start putting out. I'm going to do another one with the wife soon. We're just putting that together, so that might even come out later on tonight. So thank you very much for listening, we'll keep doing it as long as you keep listening. Thank you.